Did I start with you? So, it's time for a new question?
Yes.
Okay. I'm going to start this one with Susan. I only did her once today. Okay. I'm going to jump to question 3 under education, because the other one basically got answered by you all. Delegate Todd Gilbert, my delegate,
Amen.
supports the use of retired police officers to provide safety in our public schools. In your opinion, what is the most important common sense solution for that public safety in and around our schools?
I applaud the General Assembly wanting to address this situation where parents are concerned about children and their safety in schools. And I would say a simple way for the General Assembly to help with this, instead of telling us where the police officers should go, I would allow the sheriffs to make that decision on deployment of those resources. And on a note regarding, even when we're talking about schools and the teachers' raises, this proposal that the General Assembly is going to give teachers 2% of the raise, when you break that down, I'm just going to let you know that the localities will actually be required to pay for most of that raise. So it comes back to the idea of putting police officers in the schools. This specifically, I think you're saying retired police officers. I think that's an innovative thought. I'm concerned about the funding. Right now, our sheriffs are very short in supply on funding for deputies, and that I would think should be a decision that I would trust my sheriff, Charlie Jett, you know, check, trust, and verify. But I think that it needs to be up to the localities to deploy the resources the way in which they think that the resources should be deployed.
Folks, when it comes to safety in our schools, I wholeheartedly believe that this needs to be a local solution. I know the liberals are licking their chops. They would love to have a massive expansion of the federal government, just like the Transportation Safety Administration that came to form, creating tens of thousands of new unionized federal workers after 9/11. We cannot allow that to happen. Our localities can take care of this problem, whether it's through the Sheriff's Department, using retired police officers as well, or even our military. Let's find a local solution. We also need to tighten up and have major reforms, I agree with Ken Cuccinelli on this, in our mental health system in Virginia. There's some common themes for these horrible tragedies, and many of them stem to unbalanced and mentally ill people. We can't allow the bureaucrats to let that slip through the cracks anymore. Local solutions are the answer on this. Tightening up our mental health laws. And lastly, gun-free zones. Gun-free zones, that is like putting a highlighter on our schools for any nut job out there. We need to get rid of quote-unquote gun-free zones.
All gun-free zones should be repealed. The most dangerous place a law-abiding citizen can be is in a gun-free zone, because they are the only ones that are going to adhere to the law. The committee I chair just reported out this week a House bill, a bill that came from the House, that allows private schools to now hire private security. Now, my locality happens to have police officers in the school, but that should be a local issue. However, I do want to point out the fact that in 72-73, I was a junior in high school. I happened to be the Group 2 District 3 switch side debate champion. And this very subject about proportionality of funding of education was there. And I will tell you that today is what it was exactly in 72-73. In 72-73, the local governments paid in the 50%, over 50%, 52 to 54%. Local governments paid in the low 40s%, 41%. The federal governments were paying 5 to 7%. It's exactly the same today. It varies by 1% or 0.5% from time to time. So the announcement just a few moments ago is at least 40 years old.
Well, I don't think I oppose this, but I believe that freedom is always the answer. If you had in the public school system, every person who had a concealed carry permit and was trained to use a firearm, allowed to bring that firearm to school, so that those nut jobs know that if you walk into a school, you don't know who you're going to face, but that people in there will be armed, I guarantee you, they'll find another target. Having an armed guard there is okay, not a problem with it, very costly, okay, but it also gives them a specific target. We know where that person is, that's the only person armed, we take them out, the rest of the school is at our disposal. No, folks, freedom, the Second Amendment, is the answer to dealing with these people.
I'm going to stand up on this one too because it's really important that we get this right. Todd Gilbert, who I think is a great American, who has endorsed me, by the way, for Lieutenant Governor, so I think he's really, really a great American. Todd is working with Bev Sherwood and others to come up, actually, Susan, with some kind of grant program, so we're not going to mandate this on anybody. We know this. We know this. In these mass murders, where people, there's no one there with a firearm, the average death count is up around 12, 14 innocent people. When someone has a firearm at the time of the assault, that number drops to 2. Now, we can get into a debate about how to deal with this. I think this is an innovation that Todd is working on. We're working through it right now in the budget. We're working through it in the statute law. My committee, the governor, sent several bills to me on Friday that are going to be in my committee. You're going to be reading about them next week that'll do something on school safety. Folks, let me tell you about Newtown. Let's get serious a minute. The trouble we have in this country is fathers. We are a nation with a crisis in fatherhood. None of us are going to be able to legislate that. That's right. All of us can start leading on it by telling the truth.
Just about everything that needs to be said has been said, I think, but I want to point something really important out. As we were having the discussion about local government and their ability to make these decisions, Virginia is a Dillon Rule state. What that means is that a local government cannot pass an ordinance or a law without permission from the Commonwealth first. And so I think this legislation, and any legislation like this, is important because it's permissive. It doesn't require the local governments to do it. It allows them or permits them to do it. But without the authorizing legislation, they can't do it. So I think it's very important that the General Assembly pass authorizing legislation that allows or permits the local governments to take whatever action they feel is necessary to provide that security support for their schools. Now, we don't have deputies, our sheriffs don't do this sort of work in Fairfax County. They just transport prisoners and secure our jails. We have a police department in Fairfax County, and so having the sheriffs decide wouldn't work for Fairfax because our sheriffs don't have that kind of authority. But in our county, we do have student resource officers we have for years in our high schools and our middle schools who are armed. And what I love about having them there is they get to know the kids. We have a gang violence issue, a real problem, and not just in Fairfax County, but down the I-81 corridor and all over this Commonwealth. And by having those armed police officers, who sometimes are uniformed and sometimes they're not, in the schools, is it allows them to get to know the students, who the bad apples are, and help work with this gang problem from the inside. So I think there's a lot to be said for encouraging this.
You know, after Newtown, you know what we got from Richmond? Words. Susan and I don't have the opportunity to just answer with words. People expect us to get the job done. This year, in my budget, I'm going to be cutting $9.6 million in spending. Why? So that I can help fund SROs, school resource officers, in every middle school and every high school in Prince William County. It's going to cost $1.5 million in the first year, $1.3 million thereafter. It's the most direct way to improve school security. People need action. People are tired of words. They're empty. There's nothing there. The General Assembly has done nothing to improve school security in Virginia. Zero. You know what the four most useless words are in the English language? I introduced a bill. Does nothing. That's why we as localities have to go ahead and get the job done without the General Assembly.